The interesting conflicting insights that a lot of people can get at this early stage is pitch deck versus product, where to spend time, how to leverage that. And I know that you both have had some pretty interesting experiences with this. And so I was wondering if you talk about like leading with the product or leading with the pitch deck, what that was like and the insights you got from that.
This is where and I would consider Brian and I both technical co-founders, right? We both have a deep technical background, and there's a certain advantage to that. I don't have any experience of, I can't even imagine what it would be like to not have at least one of you be that way. But I definitely was noticing the ears perk up much more. I mean, people wanted to see the product. We'd say, hey, should we walk through the deck or should we show you the product? Every single time, without exception, it was, show me the product. That matters much more. And if you can do that, you're going to be in a way better place. And so, to me, it's not even a controversial thing. People would much rather see the thing than look at yet another pitch deck from yet another couple people that haven't committed enough to build the product in the first place. And I think to a certain degree, having a product is a mark of, every VC is going to ask, are these co-founders committed to this idea? Are they really, really going to do it? Building a product, because it is way harder than building a pitch deck, is a good testament to that commitment. And so I think if you can build the product, go build it. Please go build it. That will, I think, give you much more success than on average than just a deck.
I mean, the other thing that we got out of that, Aaron, is we were able to say, here's a set of companies who are trying the software. And I don't want to be too rosy about this. It was relatively easy to hit up a friend and say, hey, friend who works at a company, will you try my software? It's difficult to turn that person into a long-term user, right? And so that's part of the journey of market discovery, is figuring out, okay, whose itch are you really scratching? What makes them so excited about it? And how can you push on from there? And but the valuable thing for us was to be able to go back as part of the pitch deck and say, look, we know it's early. We know while we have a product, it's not all the way there yet. But here's 5 or 6 companies you've heard of who are signed in, who have accounts, who are poking around in the thing, who have told us that they would use it once it's in a more developed state, right? And I think that was the second really valuable part of having a product. People obviously do this in lean startup terms as well. I was talking with another founder who he was revenue positive from day one because he went through the extra bootstrap step of saying give me some money and I will go build it. And that was his way of validating that it was something that was truly necessary, which I think is tremendous, right? I envy that approach deeply. I think that there's a strong argument there for revenue sooner rather than later. And so super, super kudos to him. And that wasn't quite where we landed because we'd gone back and forth on when's the right time to open it up to pricing. And then there's a whole set of strategic questions around revenue. But that's, nonetheless, I think it's, at least for an enterprise SaaS product, right? You got to be able to tell someone, we think that there are real companies out there who would use this thing. And we know that because they've said so. They've said they would pay us money someday.
I think one of the questions, this is what we've been kind of bumping into as a team, is especially in the world of there's the demand to fundraise and build your product at the same time. How do you both balance that? How do you balance the time for still building your product in the early stage to doing the fundraising roadshow?
Oh, that's a great question.
Brian, how many commits did we have in August into the code base? Maybe 5.
We were able, I don't know, Aaron, we were able to keep momentum pretty high early on, but I think the more of these conversations, we hit a tipping point where thankfully we felt like we'd activated a lot of interest. And so we were having a lot of these conversations. For me personally, I found it difficult to focus on product building while that was going on. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I was spending literally, I think at one point we're having 3 or 4 calls a day. And every call, you do a debrief and that's your day, right? You don't write any code on those days. And those were more of those days than not. So the next thing is the dynamics of VC, at least the way it feels like to me, is, once one person has interest, it seems like a whole bunch of other people will suddenly have interest. I don't know if that's universal, but I've been told there is a little bit of a FOMO aspect that happens in VC world, where once the rumor gets out, suddenly people want to kind of follow in. And so it kind of worked out pretty well for us. We were able to get most of the hard parts of it done in a month. It was very, very intense. Then then we got our first term sheet, and we're like, yeah, we got a term sheet, and then, oh my God, we got to negotiate a term sheet. And that became its own thing. Do we give up a board seat or not? Do we, how much funding do we go for? And those all really, really exciting. But yeah.
And even once we closed it, it raised a new question, which is, how are we going to deploy this new capital in an effective way? So we were very fortunate to pick up a couple of strong engineers early on, right? We were able to start growing out our team, which is wonderful. But then there's the whole process of, oh shoot, now you're a real company. You gotta train people up. You gotta onboard them to this god awful rickety code base and like hope they don't run screaming for the hills during the process of building the company out. And so that probably also, I wish I could paint a rosier picture here, but maybe it's comfort for some folks out there going through a similar thing. It really clobbered our momentum altogether, and it feels like only now we're sort of getting back into the flow where everyone feels comfortable with the business problem and the code base and engaged with the problem and moving forward. So it did lead us through a period where we probably weren't as responsive in product building as we could have been, and I think it hurt us a little bit in some of our relationships with folks who would use the software early on. And so our mission now is to use what we've been given to build that back up again and move towards a high stability platform rather than the arrangement of plywood and duct tape that we were starting with.
I think it's really interesting, just the level of juggling that both of you illustrated between like the important versus urgent matrix of these new challenges you kind of have to learn once they come up. And it's like designing the org, building out the team, onboarding people. You got to figure out how to get to that stage first by fundraising. To get to fundraising, you got to have a product. So it's like there's this really interesting process laid out there.
Yeah, the anecdote I'll give you is this: how it feels. Congratulations on finishing the 10K. Go suit up from the marathon. It starts in 5 minutes.
That's a perfect analogy. Oh my gosh.